see you, buddy. Thanks for coming. Yeah, we're doing fine. How about you? I hit the right thing there. Let me thank all our witnesses for being here. We have, you know how this works. So you got to listen to us and give a bunch of speeches before we get to your important testimony. So bear with us, and we'll get to you as quickly as we can. Before we do opening statements, I would ask unanimous consent that our colleague from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney, be allowed to participate in today's hearing without objection. So ordered. We'll start with opening statements, and we anticipate the chairman from the full committee and the ranking member of the full committee, I think, joining us, so we'll probably have 4 opening statements. President Obama's 2009 stimulus directed nearly $90 billion of taxpayer funds toward green initiatives. The President told the American people that, quote, green jobs would be a major force, not just for environmental conservation, but for economic recovery as well. The President said that we will harness the sun and the winds and the soil to fuel our cars and run our factories, and he promised that our country would create millions of green jobs, which would help us compete in the global economy. However, 3 years into this gamble, available evidence demonstrates these efforts have wasted vast sums of taxpayer money and have failed to achieve the stated goals. Today's hearing is a continuation of the work done at the full committee and this subcommittee, seeking to ensure that the American people know how their money is being spent. 4 of the companies testifying before this subcommittee today, Abound, First Solar, Nevada Geothermal, and BrightSource, cumulatively received $5 billion in loan guarantees from the Department of Energy, 1/3 of the entire loan guarantee portfolio. I want to thank each of these companies for testifying today. I know many of you had to travel a great distance. We appreciate you being here. Alternative energy certainly has a place in our economy, and we hope that all these companies succeed. But the best way to get cheap energy to American consumers is to let the market forces work, not to allow bureaucrats in Washington to select who wins and who loses. I also want to thank our other witnesses for appearing today, especially Mr. Nelson, the CEO of Solar 3D. Jim has shown that billions of taxpayer dollars are not necessary to advance green technology. When taxpayers lost over $500 million on Solyndra, the Obama administration said that it was just one bad apple and the rest of the portfolio was strong. It is becoming increasingly clear that Solyndra was just the tip of the iceberg in a sea of taxpayer risk. Too often, this administration takes liberties with the American people's money based on the flawed assumption that government knows best. Today is about understanding what happens when the Federal Government tries to play venture capitalist. And with that, I would yield to the gentleman from Ohio, my good friend from Cleveland, Mr. Kucinich.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and to our guests who will be testifying in a moment. I'm grateful for today's hearing because I think it will serve to dispel some misconceptions about the Department of Energy's loan guarantee program and President Obama's energy agenda. Recognizing that energy independence is critical to America's future, Congress created the loan guarantee program in 2009 to support innovative energy projects that involve more risk than is typical for project and corporate debt financing. Now, my friends in the majority would have you believe that the well-publicized bankruptcies of Beacon Power and Solyndra threatened to tank the Department of Energy's entire loan guarantee portfolio. In reality, the Department of Energy's 1705 loan guarantee portfolio program is doing better than Congress expected when it established the program. When Congress created the 1705 program, we appropriated about $2.47 billion in credit subsidy costs as an insurance fund to cover potential losses stemming from defaults by companies and projects receiving loan guarantees. That means that Congress prepared for losses to reach about 15% of total loan guarantees provided by the program. In reality, actual losses are about 3%. That means that the Department of Energy's rigorous and thorough due diligence process for choosing among applicants resulted in safer choices than Congress had anticipated. My friends on the other side of the aisle have singled out for scrutiny Federal support for renewable energy technologies. I note that they have not raised questions about the last 100 years of subsidies to promote the development of fossil fuel technologies. And I have not heard of any committee investigation into subsidies for the nuclear energy industry either, even though in February 2010, a single nuclear project received $8.33 billion in subsidies. Now, investing in energy independence is critical to America's national security, its economic growth, and future job creation. If we fail to support these emerging renewable energy technologies, our country will fall behind countries like Germany and China. If anything, we do not do enough for renewable energy, especially when compared to support for oil and gas. I've got a chart that I'd like put up if we can do that. There we go. Now, this chart attached to my statement, Mr. Chairman, shows how much greater is the ongoing support for the oil and gas industry compared with renewable energy technology. So what I'm wondering is why my friends have devoted 4 hearings, including today's, to criticize renewable energy companies who have received federal support as Congress intended in a well-managed program that has returned better results than Congress even anticipated. So I think we should be helping to preserve America's leadership in a technology that will only become more important, not less, in the future. Impugning the reputation of these companies before their television cameras will not be productive. So with that, I want to thank my friend for calling this hearing, and I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Anyone wish to make an opening statement on the majority side? Our chairman is not yet with us, so we will proceed with members who may have 7 days to submit opening statements and extraneous material for the record. We now want to welcome our panel of witnesses. We first want to introduce Mr. James Nelson, who is the President and CEO of Solar 3D Incorporated. We have also with us Mr. Gregory Katz, who is the President of Capital E. Mr. Greg Witso is the President and CEO of Abound Solar. And Mr. Brian Fairbank is President and CEO of Nevada Geothermal Power. And Mr. Michael Ahern is the Chairman of the Board at First Solar. And finally, Mr. Woolard is the President and CEO of Bright Source Energy Company. The committee rules require that we have witnesses sworn in, so if you just stand and raise your right hand. I'll get this done here. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, answer in the affirmative. Let the record show that all witnesses answered in the affirmative. Again, thank you all for being here. You guys, I think, understand the rules. You got 5 minutes. We'll be a little lenient, but close to 5 as you can do it, because we do want to get to questions, and the goal is to try to get out of here by noon if we can today, because I know that I have something I have to be to at 12. So we're going to go right down the line.
If you have to leave, I'll...
Hey, okay. I would trust the good gentleman from Ohio, even though I disagreed with some of the statements in his opening statement. We're going to go right down the line. We're going to start with Mr. Nelson. You get your 5 minutes, and then we'll just go right through, and then we'll get to questions. So, Mr. Nelson, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you. The government green energy policy includes 2 parts: support for basic research with the aim of developing new green energy technologies, and 2 is making loan guarantees to promote the adoption of green energy technologies. Supporting research is an important role of government, but the loan guarantee program is a wasteful mistake because it doesn't work. Having spent most of my career developing strategy for companies large and small, I have learned one important thing, and that is that it is economics, not government policy, that drives behavior. And it's economics, not government policy, that will drive enthusiastic adoption of green energy. My company, Solar 3D, is a technology development company in Santa Barbara, California. We're developing an advanced technology, a new 3-dimensional solar cell that will reduce the cost of solar energy by about 50%. Our objective is similar to that of ill-fated Solyndra, to develop a new solar technology that can change the economics of the industry. However, our manner of execution is very different. We have been supported by private investment in our company since the establishment in August of 2010. We are not dependent or depending on government funding. We certainly do not expect such support will be necessary to facilitate commercialization of our new technology. Our go-to-market strategy will be to partner with a company that has the know-how to manufacture products similar to ours. While the 3D solar cell is a unique concept, our engineering approach has been to design a product with existing equipment, methods, and facilities in mind. We lease our facilities, and we were able to pay the University of California for the use of higher-level clean rooms and labs for our initial work in designing our new technology. These measures keep our capital costs low. We keep our staff lean and hiring key personnel for full-time work, and then we use consultants to keep our operating costs low. By contrast, Solyndra's unique technology attracted a $535 million loan guarantee, but there were many problems that happened as a result of their execution strategy. One is that they had to use all new machines. A second one is they built a brand new 300,000 square foot facility complete with whistling robots. Three is that they, even when the award was granted, it was clear that their operations was failing. And finally, it was reported that bonuses were paid to the executives despite the poor performance. The Department of Energy's loan guarantee to Solyndra was an embarrassing example of the current system. The investment was undoubtedly scrutinized and rejected by nearby Silicon Valley venture capitalists, organizations abundantly more qualified to identify good investments than government committees. There was no urgent strategic need for the U.S. to have Solyndra rush its product to market. The decision to fund Solyndra's attempt to commercialize does not stand up to reason. However, politics ultimately trumped reason. The bureaucrats awarding the financial aid were beholden to their political supervisors who had promised Americans that they were going to fix the U.S. economy by creating millions of green jobs, something that could not possibly happen in any time frame worthy of consideration. The price of Solyndra's failure was borne by the American people. At Solar 3D's current level of development, our company has a much better chance than Solyndra ever did of creating a game-changing technology. We have reached this point on the principles of free enterprise, of risk or return, without the use of government aid. In the end, we will become commercial for less than $10 million with the hope of creating a technology that will change the landscape of solar energy. It will be an example of the amazing American economic system at work. Government has a legitimate role in supporting basic research. ARPA-E, the program that awards small tranches of money for basic research and development in alternative energy, will receive $250 million in funding this year, which is only half of what we lost on the Solyndra project alone. This program can and should be expanded. Its objective is to fund innovative technologies that will improve the economics of alternative energy, which is ultimately the only path to widespread adoption of clean energy. The loan guarantee program should be retired permanently. The path to commercialization requires brains, discipline, and grit. It is rarely aided and often impeded by government involvement. Our government should trust the free market forces that have made America great. Ultimately, our country's investment in renewable power must help us become more globally competitive. Job creation and other ancillary goals are byproducts of renewable energy growth and are worthy objectives, but simply come as a result of successful businesses. The most important reason to invest is to get control of and reduce the cost of power generation in our country. The desire for more jobs and employment is a political and social desire, not a business desire. I have reviewed a simple review of the DOE website reveals that about $16.6 billion has been put out in guarantees in the 1705 program and has created 2,400 jobs. That's $6.3 million per permanent job. It is not an economic program. Businesses are not made successful by more jobs. People get jobs by being competitive in the free enterprise system, by preparing themselves to be employed and to be better than the existing candidates. Renewable energy should be the same. By being great and productive in renewable energy, we need to produce the best products for the lowest price in the world. And that means that we need to get better operationally through the discipline and grit of the free enterprise system.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Appreciate that. Mr. Katz, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on these important issues today. The hearing addresses several questions. One is the DOE loan guarantee program successful financially? Specifically, does the program meet or fail to meet its financial objectives? Two, is the DOE loan program successful in non-financial objectives? Specifically, does it meet or fail to meet additional objectives, including strengthening job creation, security, and competitiveness? The DOE loan program has three parts, two of which were established in the George W. Bush administration, and one of which was established in the Obama administration. Section 1705 of the DOE loan program was established through the 2009 American Reinvestment and Recovery Act as part of a far larger program to accelerate U.S. investment and employment in response to the 2008-2009 deep economic downturn. Federal loan guarantees, like 1705, are established to enable financing of projects that would otherwise probably not receive financial funding, and like other bank and government commercial lending programs, assumes a default rate as normal and expected. In establishing the 1705 loan guarantee program, for example, the Office of Management Budget predicted and Congress budgeted $2.47 billion to cover expected project defaults or partial defaults. Defaults from Solyndra and Beacon, after some funds are recouped from both parties, are likely to net out to about $300 to $400 million. This is roughly 2% of the amount guaranteed. If there are no more losses, then the program would have to be viewed as a resounding success. While it is easy, in hindsight, to criticize the DOE loan program, the only fair basis for judging success or failure is whether the program achieved its financial objectives. Review of the loan portfolio outstanding suggests total defaults are ultimately likely to be in the range of $400 to $800 million, or about 1/4 of the amount projected and budgeted. Based on a reasonable assessment of outstanding portfolio financial profile and risk, the DOE loan program can therefore rationally only be viewed as a big success. There are other objectives, including security. The Army and Navy both have net zero programs aimed at reducing energy use on military bases, with the Navy targeting at 50% of its bases to have zero net energy consumption by 2020 from a combination of renewable energy and energy efficiency. Energy is, in the words of Admiral Mullen, about not just defense but security, not just survival but prosperity. Our national defense infrastructure and systems hold the potential, in Admiral Mullen's words, to help stem the tide of strategic security issues related to climate change while improving operational effectiveness. The wind and solar innovation and industries were largely developed here in the United States, but our major competitors, including China and Germany, have, through sustained federal domestic subsidies and purchases, rapidly expanded the size and strength of their domestic wind and PV corporations. Today, of the top 10 global wind and PV manufacturers, only one of each is located in the United States. We should be deeply concerned about the security implications of the U.S. losing its global competitive leadership in these critical industries. Broad public support for expanded federal investment in renewable energy reflects this understanding. China and Germany are out-investing us. Given the strategic and security importance of clean energy industries, weakening federal support for the U.S. wind and PV and other clean industries undermines U.S. competitiveness and security. For security and financial reasons, the DOE should use the 85% of its 1705 funds that are still unused and still available in the Treasury to fulfill its purpose of funding and supporting additional U.S. clean energy technologies and companies. Defaults in the 1705 program to date have been far below projected. We expect over time to be a total of only 1/4 of what is budgeted. The clear financial success, the employment and security benefits demonstrated by this program, demonstrates that the DOE should ramp up its loan guarantee efforts and provide loan guarantee support for roughly another $30 to $40 billion of U.S. clean energy projects and companies. The DOE 1705 loan guarantee program provides an important lift to U.S. clean energy investment and growth, both strengthening job creation and supporting the strength of U.S. clean energy industries. But our main trading competitors, including China and Germany, are out-investing us. Given the strategic, security, and employment importance of U.S. clean energy industries, weakening federal support for the U.S. wind and solar industries undermines U.S. competitiveness and security. If the U.S. military is forced to import the technology it needs to achieve its mission of shifting to clean energy, it will weaken U.S. security. For financial security, employment, and competitiveness reasons, the DOE should use the 85% of its fund unused and still available to backstop U.S. energy companies and projects. And given the clear success of its loan program to date, based on rational measures of financial performance and on other measures including security, employment, and competitiveness, the largest risk is that DOE slows its loan guarantee program. Failing to make substantial additional loan guarantees to expand U.S. strength in renewables and clean energy, strengthen U.S. job competitiveness and security would be an irrational and costly failure. The losers would be U.S. industry, U.S. military, U.S. taxpayer, and the U.S. workers. The only beneficiaries would be China and our other international competitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Katz. Mr. Witzel.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, my name is Craig Witzel. Since November of last year, I've been the CEO of Abound Solar.
Mr. Witzel, can you make sure that the red light's on your mic and we can all hear that?
That's going to help.
There we go. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Craig Witzel, as I said. Since November of last year, I've been the CEO of Abound Solar, an emerging U.S. technology company that manufactures solar panels in Colorado. We have an R&D facility in Colorado as well as a factory. And we also have a planned site in Indiana that would be our second U.S. factory. Abound is very much an American story. Our company stemmed from advanced photovoltaic research started in the late 80s at Colorado State University. Early funding came from the National Science Foundation as well as the National Renewable Energy Lab. In 2000...
Try just sliding that over and see if that, I don't know why that, we usually don't have a hum.
In 2007, Abound was formed as
go.
a startup company to commercialize this very innovative research. Abound produces a thin film cadmium telluride, or CadTel, solar panel using proprietary advanced manufacturing processes known as closed-space sublimation. This technology, invented by Abound, allows fabrication of all critical photovoltaic semiconductor layers into one continuous piece of equipment. At scale, CadTel can be produced at lower cost per watt than the crystalline silicon modules produced by many Chinese companies today. Abound is one of only 3 companies in the world to have significant CadTel experience. First Solar also uses CadTel, and actually 7 months ago, General Electric announced that it would also use CadTel as its technology of choice for a new solar module factory in Colorado.
Mr. Witzel, I'm going to interrupt just for 1 second. We're going to, just so it doesn't bother you or anyone else, grab Mr. Katz's mic, slide it over, and turn yours off, and let's see if that helps.
It is off.
No, actually use Mr. Katz's mic.
Okay.
We'll try that so we don't have that hum.
Is that better?
I think so.
I think I got a bad mic over here. Okay. So as I said, GE just announced that it would use CadTel as its technology of choice for a new solar factory in Colorado. And of course, all 3 of these companies are American firms. Crystalline silicon, a much older technology used by Chinese companies, is what they're using to dominate our markets. Actually, crystalline silicon was invented in America by Bell Labs in 1954. Now, fortunately, many believe that America can still win in the long run with newer technologies like CadTel. In fact, within recent weeks, Abound, along with First Solar and GE, has been solicited to collaborate with the U.S. PV Manufacturing Consortium, Cimatech, and NREL to help accelerate U.S. advancement of this critical technology for the future. This is not unlike Cimatech's initiative started in 1987, which helped recapture the U.S. lead in semiconductor manufacturing. Abound has attracted more than $300 million in private investment. In 2009, Abound also applied for additional funding to expand and upgrade our capacity through the 1705 DOE loan program. The DOE review lasted nearly 2 years, involved several technical and financial third-party consultants, and the loan was finalized in December 2010. To date, Abound has drawn down about $70 million out of the potential $400 loan. Funds were used to complete and start up 2 production lines in Colorado. With these funds, our company has made significant progress, nearly doubling the efficiency of our panels from 45 watts per panel up to now 85 watts per panel today. Abound has not drawn down any additional funds under the program since August of 2011 and does not plan to draw down any more funds. Abound's technology and business made very solid progress until about the second half of last year, when module prices fell 50% as a result of unprecedented discounting by Chinese solar panel companies. Abound believes that at scale, our CadTel modules can compete with any other global company, but with a reported $34 billion in subsidies behind Chinese module makers, it's very hard when the competition is a country and not just a company. Extreme price actions by Chinese companies believed to be selling these solar panels below their cost has hurt many American solar manufacturing companies, including Abound. Instead of matching Chinese price levels, which would have caused us to sell our panels at a loss, Abound in February of this year had made a very difficult decision, and that was to shut down our current generation module production in order to accelerate development of a next-gen 85-watt module. Now, while this very difficult action resulted in the temporary elimination of 180 full-time and 100 temporary jobs, we do believe that this very competitive next-generation module can create even more jobs for America in the future. Abound's technology progress has been made possible by $300 million of private investment and $70 million drawn down from the DOE loan. Today, China dominates the global solar module market using low-cost labor, enormous government backing, and U.S.-invented crystal silicon technology. But while this American invention has turned into Chinese industry, we believe that the U.S. can still win in the future by developing and scaling newer technologies like CadTel. At scale, our solar panels can be built by American workers with good-paying jobs at lower cost per watt than competing crystal and Chinese panels made with low-cost labor in China. Today, technology startup companies come with significant risks. We know that. The recent aggressive price actions from Chinese companies do threaten to prevent innovative companies like Abound from achieving needed scale to win. Even with long-term superior technology, this dynamic has made the solar market very difficult for Abound and other module suppliers. The technology advances we have made can be critical elements to the U.S. regaining a competitive position in the global market. As we work to launch our next generation of solar module with the use of private financing, we are determined to continue to advance this U.S. technology to help turn American inventions into American industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitsoe. Mr. Fairbanks.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. How's my mic going? It's my pleasure to appear today as a representative of Nevada Geothermal Power and the Blue Mountain facility, and to speak with you about the many good things occurring at Blue Mountain, both in terms of what is occurring at the power plant and also in the Winnemucca, Nevada region and beyond. These positive things are a result of the hard work of Nevada Geothermal Power and the Blue Mountain employees, the support of civic leaders and ordinary Nevadans, the dedication of trusted lenders, and of course the assistance of the Department of Energy Section 1705 Loan Guarantee Program. By way of introduction, I am the President and CEO of Nevada Geothermal Power, Inc., which is the ultimate corporate owner of the Blue Mountain Faulkner 1 geothermal power facility. I'm a geological engineer by training with over 30 years of geothermal engineering, exploration, and assessment experience. I'm the past president of the Canadian Geothermal Energy Association and currently serve on the board of the Geothermal Resources Council based in California. My geothermal experience has taken me around the world and has included, by way of example, participation in the discovery of Canada's Meager Creek geothermal area in the late 70s, geothermal resource exploration and evaluations throughout North America and Central and South America, participation in the development of a national power plan for Kenya and consultation on their geothermal plants, and extensive geothermal experience throughout the Basin and Range geologic province of Nevada. Before delving into the specifics of the Blue Mountain facility, I think it worthwhile to briefly describe the nature of geothermal power and why we are so optimistic about its future as a clean, reliable source of energy in the United States. Geothermal power is a unique source of renewable natural energy that is a product of heat generated by and stored in the Earth. The Earth's core is continually producing enormous amounts of heat, primarily by means of decay of radioactive materials, and secondarily by energy left over from the Earth's formation. Heat generated in the Earth's core is conducted upward in the crust under certain geological conditions, such as the emplacement of shallow magma chambers around young volcanoes, or thinning of the crust in rift belts, such as occurs in Nevada. Rock and water and the Earth's shallow crust is sometimes heated to a very high temperature. Surface manifestations of the underlying geothermal energy range from shallow hot groundwater, hot springs, or fumaroles. We are all familiar with some of the famous examples of geothermal energy in action, such as volcanoes. Mount St. Helens comes to mind, the Old Faithful Geyser in Yellowstone National Park, and other hot springs areas. Advances in technology now allow us to harness the heat stored in the rock and water and convert it to electrical power that can be used to power our cities and industries without any of the pollution or negative side effects caused by other sources of energy. This is not a simple task, but one that we are committed to. Geothermal power plants are baseload, operating nonstop 365 days a year at around 95% availability. Other sources of natural energy, such as wind power, solar power, and hydroelectric power, all operate at lower capacities. And because geothermal plants require no fuel to operate, they are unaffected by fluctuations in prices, produce minimal harmful emissions, and have a very small surface footprint. Geothermal energy is thus a natural, clean, renewable, and efficient source of power, the potential of which we have only just begun to tap. NGP's team consists of outstanding, dedicated individuals who are true experts in their respective fields. Our technical leaders have over a century of combined experience in energy and in the geothermal energy communities, and are universally respected for their expertise and commitment. Relating to this morning's project focus and the DOE loan guarantee, NGP Blue Mountain 1 LLC is the registered owner of 4 federal geothermal leases covering 8 sections of land, and additional private geothermal leases covering 9 sections of land for a total of 17 square miles. Our leases include both the geothermal production rights and surface rights necessary for the power plant and well field activities. The leases are situated with no competing geothermal leases in the area and no known environmental or other impediments to current or future drilling and plant operations. The Blue Mountain geothermal resource represents the first new discovery of a geothermal site in the western United States in 20 years. Today, Blue Mountain is one of the largest binary cycle geothermal plants in Nevada. The Blue Mountain project was helped by the DOE Loan Guarantee Program, which backs a loan by John Hancock. The facility's operating capacity is sufficient to service the Hancock loan through its remaining term. No taxpayer dollars have gone towards servicing the Hancock loan. But our strategic plans for Blue Mountain are more ambitious than merely producing power to meet our loan commitments. We continue to work actively with independent engineers to understand and utilize the geothermal resource at Blue Mountain. We remain bullish on the future geothermal resource potential and are working on a plan to construct new northern injection wells and 1 new production well to achieve a targeted 52 megawatts on a gross basis, or 41 megawatts net to the grid. These growth plans are possible only because of the solid foundation that has been put in place by the hard work of Nevada geothermal power employees and the financial support of our lenders, and of course the loan guarantee put in place by DOE. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about NGP's Blue Mountain prospect. I am enormously proud of our accomplishments at the Blue Mountain geothermal site and look forward to many years of clean energy production at this facility. I would be happy to answer any questions the members of the subcommittee might have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Fairbanks. Mr. Ahern.
Chairman Jordan and members of the committee, my name is Mike Ahern. I'm the chairman of the board of First Solar. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee today to offer my perspective on the Department of Energy's loan guarantee program. First Solar is the lowest cost solar module manufacturer in the industry, one of the largest solar module manufacturers in the world, and the global leader in developing and constructing utility-scale photovoltaic power plants. We've produced 6 gigawatts of solar modules, representing an estimated $15 billion or more of solar power installations. We are headquartered in Tempe, Arizona, and our global R&D and U.S. manufacturing centers are located in Perrysburg, Ohio. In addition to our 1,800 associates in the U.S., our manufacturing and project development activities support more than 7,000 additional U.S. supply chain and construction jobs. Last year alone, we spent more than $1 billion with U.S. suppliers in 35 states for everything from glass to steel components. We trade on the NASDAQ, and we are currently the only renewable energy company listed in the S&P 500. First Solar's success reflects over 2 decades of entrepreneurial struggle, innovation, and effective public-private partnership. Our core thin-film semiconductor process technology was developed in the early 1990s in partnership with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. In 1999, we formed First Solar and committed venture capital funding to commercialize the technology. A project we thought would require 2 years and $40 million ended up requiring 6 years and over $100 million of venture capital, as we encountered and eventually solved a number of problems typical of startup technology companies. After solving the core commercial problems, we grew exponentially. Between 2005 and 2009, aided by generous market subsidies in Europe and technical assistance from NREL, Sandia National Laboratory, and Brookhaven National Laboratory, we scaled our annual production volume 50-fold from 20 to over 1,100 megawatts, expanded our workforce tenfold from 200 to over 2,000 associates, reduced our manufacturing costs by nearly 70%, and established ourselves as the global industry leader. In 2008, we decided to expand beyond manufacturing and selling solar modules to become the first company to engineer and construct large PV power plants for the utility market. Photovoltaics to that point had been largely relegated to smaller distributed generation systems and were generally considered too costly to compete with wind and geothermal power. To meet the cost and performance requirements of utilities, we vertically integrated our business into the design, engineering, and construction of solar power plants. And in parallel, we implemented a number of R&D programs and initiatives to reduce costs, improve plant reliability, and effectively integrate large solar plants onto the grid. With now over 2 gigawatts of power plants completed or under construction, we have demonstrated our ability to meet the exacting standards of the utility industry. Our advanced technology, innovative system designs, and economies of scale have enabled steep cost reductions and accelerated construction cycles. Our plant monitoring and control capabilities have validated the reliability and grid compatibility of our power plants. By consistently delivering on our promises, we've earned the business of some of the most respected companies in the electric utility industry, including APS, Exelon, GE, NextEra, NRG, PG&E, Sempra, Southern California Edison, Southern Company, and Mid-American. These accomplishments have enabled us to launch a major initiative to expand to new markets across the globe without the need for expensive solar subsidies. Our success story came close to ending in early failure. The financial sector meltdown and economic downturn in 2009 jeopardized the entire market for renewable energy, including First Solar's efforts to enter the utility market. The timely and effective intervention by Congress through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, by the Treasury Department through the Section 1603 program, and by the DOE through the Loan Guarantee Program helped to assure near-term liquidity in the project finance market and foster the development of more robust private project finance markets. These initiatives acted as both an interim lifeline and a bridge to the future, and for that we are sincerely grateful. In recent months, the European solar subsidies that historically supported the industry have declined sharply, impacting First Solar and the rest of the industry. However, largely because of our successful expansion into the utility market, we remain financially strong and well-positioned to execute through the current market environment. I'm aware that questions have arisen regarding the DOE's Loan Guarantee Program, including questions about First Solar's applications. First Solar worked diligently and transparently with the DOE to assure that sound results were achieved for each of these projects. I would like to thank the committee again for the opportunity today, and I welcome the chance to answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Ahern. Mr. Willard, our last one. Go right ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and members of the subcommittee. My name is John Willard. I'm President and CEO of BrightSource Energy. I have 2 decades of experience in the energy and environmental sectors as an executive, an entrepreneur, and an investor. BrightSource designs, develops, and deploys large-scale concentrating solar thermal technology to produce high-value steam for electric power, petroleum, and industrial process markets worldwide. Our technology is very different from solar photovoltaic or PV energy, the kind you typically find on rooftops. Our project, thousands of mirrors called heliostats, continuously track the sun through the day. And we focus light onto a solar receiver which sits on top of a tower. We generate power similar to traditional power plants like coal or natural gas by creating high-temperature steam to turn a turbine to generate electricity. Our technology has been tested and proven in the field to the satisfaction of several independent engineering firms at 2 smaller scale facilities. Our partners and investors include some of the world's best-known companies. Our investors include private equity firms, strategic investors such as Chevron, BP, Alstom, and Google and NRG as project investors. We now employ more than 400 people in our Oakland and worldwide offices, and we have one of the largest portfolios in the United States of signed utility-scale power purchase agreements. First, I'm pleased to report on the Ivanpah project with construction management by Bechtel that is on schedule and within budget, and we expect to deliver power to the grid by early next year. Ivanpah will generate and sell power to Pacific Gas and Electric and Southern California Edison under 3 of 13 power purchase agreements that we have signed with those 2 large utilities. In total, the Ivanpah project will cost about $2.2 billion to build, and at 392 megawatts, will produce enough power for 140,000 homes each year. We procure from a supply chain that stretches across 17 states. The majority of the materials used to build the project are procured domestically, and we estimate that approximately 70% of the project's value will be captured in the United States. The project is creating 1,400 construction jobs at peak. The project will generate $250 million in earnings for these construction workers, and over its 30-year life will produce $650 million in earnings for workers on the site, including the 90 permanent jobs required to operate the plant. In addition to the supply chain, investment and labor wages created, the project will also generate $300 million in state and local tax revenues over its lifetime. Large energy infrastructure projects typically use project finance to provide the funds that they need for construction. Consistent with this model, the Ivanpah Project Company is jointly owned by NRG, Google, and BrightSource. These equity investors have collectively committed $598 million to the project company. Under the DOE guaranteed loan, the project company is the borrower and has contracts with the 2 largest investor-owned utilities in California to sell all of the project's power at a fixed price for 20 or 25 years. These future cash payments back the loan repayment. BrightSource first applied to pre-qualify for a DOE loan guarantee in December of 2006, proposing to use a project finance structure. In April 2011, 4.5 years after we first applied, our loan guarantee transaction closed. During that period, BrightSource funded well over $2 million of independent review by world-class engineering, finance, and legal firms selected by and operating on behalf of the DOE. The loan guarantee program served an important role in the market, allowing our technology and project to achieve meaningful scale, to drive down cost, validate our technology, and enable a new industry to succeed. In short, creating the necessary conditions to allow commercial financing. Going forward, we expect to finance all of our future projects commercially. At BrightSource, we are proud of our company and we're proud of the Ivanpah project. I appreciate the opportunity to address the subcommittee and welcome any questions you may have. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. I thank all of you for your testimony today. Mr. Woolard, do you agree with Mr. Katz and Mr. Kucinich that the 1705 program is working and it's worked well? Yes or no?
I believe that the project works very well for project financings where you have a large utility offtake.
And do you think it worked well in your particular case? I think on page 5 of your testimony, and I'm quoting, the DOE's review process was extremely thorough and marked by thoughtful analysis. So you thought it worked well in your situation, their agreement to give you, how much money did you get, by the way, from Department of Energy and loan guarantee?
I fully agree with that statement. We got $1.6 billion, and it was a very thorough analysis.
Thorough and thoughtful analysis is your statement here. And do you believe any of the, do you believe you received the loan guarantee, there was any political influence at all involved in that decision, or was it based completely on the merits of the project, the Ivanpah project, and your particular company, BrightSource?
No, I believe it was completely on the merits of the project. We started the application in 2006 and went through a 4-year period, a 4-year cycle.
Okay, well, this is where I'm confused, because you guys gave us 30,000 documents on Friday, and contained in those documents, I'm going to put the first email up if I could, was an email, because today you're telling us it was thorough and thoughtful analysis, and there was no political influence, and yet we have this email correspondence between you and Matt Rogers. Matt Rogers, the Senior Advisor to the Secretary of Energy for the Recovery Act, so this is the guy who decides things. You say in this email, I think it's interesting, the very first thing you say is, please don't distribute this. You know, we wouldn't want the taxpayers to know what's going on with their money. But down in this email, the last sentence, you say, Department of Energy's credibility is thin, and I'm currently trying to put off communications with people on the Hill. So which is it? Today you say they're thorough and thoughtful and there's a good program and great analysis, but in this email, when you're trying to get the money, you say their credibility is thin. Which is it?
I never said they were fast. So as we went
Well,
through the
no, this is
process-
not about timing, it's about credibility. You use the word
Actually-
credibility in this email.
Yeah, no, it is very much about timing, and if you allow me to explain, we had actually invested quite a bit of money at BrightSource in moving the project forward, and the government we had a conditional commitment, and the transaction had been contemplated to close in September of 2000, and this was 2000. Sorry, my eyes can't quite.
January 4th, 2010.
Yeah, so September 2009.
Yeah.
Was
Well,
when we
let's
originally
move to the
contemplated
second thing,
closure.
because you just said it was completely based on the merits of the project. But you say, can you see the big print up there where it says also, that last paragraph, next last paragraph, which starts with also? Can you read that first sentence for me?
Also Darby at PG&E, that sentence?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Darby at PG&E talked directly to Obama about the program's challenges and the bad situation it puts him in.
Now, who's the Darby in that? Is that the head of Pacific Gas and Electric?
Yeah. So Peter Darby was the CEO of PG&E.
And
his company.
they had a vested interest in getting this thing approved because you were providing them their required commitment for green power, right?
Yes. PG&E was very dependent on
And is
ours and several projects.
Is the Obama in this sentence that in your email sent to the guy who's making the decision, is the Obama I think it is? That's the President of the United States?
Yes, I had been told.
So wait a minute now. So just a minute ago, you told me there was no political influence in deciding this, and yet in an email you sent to the guy who's making the decision, you referenced the President of the United States, who just according to this email, had a direct conversation with the guy who cares pretty deeply about this thing getting approved.
Yeah.
So again, which is it?
For our project.
Was it based on the merit, and were they thorough and thoughtful, or were they no credibility and based on politics?
Our project, I can assure you, was based on the merits as I went through the process.
So then why did you think it was necessary to tell the guy who makes the decision that a guy who you know pretty well, who must have communicated to you directly, talked directly with the President of the United States?
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, what I believe...
I'm just trying to clear up the confusion.
I'd like to help. What I believe that Peter Darby was saying, I don't know, was that he had many projects under this loan guarantee program. I believe a significant portion of many of his projects was dependent on this, and it had.
But the key is you thought it was important enough to cite in an email to the guy who's in charge of making the decision. And 1 month after this email, you got the conditional approval. Let me go to the next email if I could. This one is amazing to me. I mean, this is just amazing. It's another email from you to Jonathan Silver, Executive Director of the Loan Guarantee Program. And the email, you start off, please see below a draft of the email our chairman, John Bryson, who's now the Commerce Secretary, chairman of your board, is preparing to send to the White House Chief of Staff, Bill Daley. So you're asking the guy who's in charge of making the decision on, now you're past the conditional, this is the final guarantee, you're asking the guy to proofread an email that your chairman's going to send to the White House Chief of Staff. And you say there's no political involvement? I mean, this is amazing. The person who makes the decision, this is not some kid asking their mom to proofread their homework. This is the taxpayer dollars by the guy who's going to decide. And you're saying, hey, can you proofread this even though you're going to make the decision? Because we want our chairman to send, who's going to be the next Commerce Secretary, we want him to send a letter to the White House Chief of Staff. And then you just said 2 minutes ago that there was no political involvement in the decision to give your company $1.6 billion of taxpayer money.
I believe that everything we did in our project was fully on its merits, and it's a very solid project.
Do you think it's customary? I think it'd be interesting to see what Mr. Nelson has. Do you think it's customary for a company to be able to say to someone who's going to decide whether they get a loan guarantee or not, hey, proofread this letter that our chairman is going to send to the White House Chief of Staff, that we're going to send to Bill Daley? That's unbelievable.
I believe that the letter that was contemplated to be sent was all around the program itself and making sure that the program...
Well, you read this letter. We need guidance and support from the White House. You know, that's amazing. Dear Bill, we need a commitment from the White House to quarterback the loan closure between OMB and DOE by March 18th. Mr. White House Chief of Staff, can you approve this by a certain date? We need this. Unbelievable. Let me just put up one last thing because I know I'm out of time and I want to get to the ranking member. Let me put up, because we have the full chairman here, the chairman of the full committee here. We had Mr. Chu, I want to put up what the secretary said to us just 2 months ago in questions that I asked him. Mr. Secretary, how about John Bryson, former chairman of the board at BrightSource, now the Secretary of Commerce? Did that in any way influence your decision to give a loan guarantee to BrightSource? Secretary said no. White House, did the White House ever talk to you about any of these respective companies involving these individuals? Did someone from the White House, Chief of Staff, someone from the White House call you? And the Secretary said no. Mr. Chairman, I think we got to have the Secretary back in here, because this is certainly his response to those direct questions certainly doesn't square with emails we got in a batch of 30,000 documents on Friday from BrightSource. And I think it's important.
Would the gentleman yield?
Be happy to yield to the full.
I will commit to you today that we will invite the Secretary back to clarify the record, along with letters to the administration asking him to waive the normal presidential exclusion of conversation, since it's clear that there was direct conversation leading to a form of favoritism for BrightSource. We'll ask the President to give us the records of those conversations with PG&E and others.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would just ask this too. To my knowledge, this is the first time we've had any direct link to the White House in the 1705 program. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, this discovery is the first.
And I went over time, and I'll be generous with the time to the ranking member, gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask unanimous consent for just to place my my opening statement in the record and to include clarification as to the ranking member's slide he used in his opening statement. I'd like to, if you will, and this gentleman from Ohio is my dear longtime friend, but I think we can shed light on the fact that those ratios, if stated effectively, including the fact that the oil industry only receives a 6% credit under 199, where any other manufacturer, such as those in your district, Mr. Kucinich, receives a 9%. If you discount where they get 3% less rather than the same amount as every other manufacturer in America, I believe we can provide additional charts that will fairly reflect other views.
Reserving the right to object, I would be happy to have you submit that, and we will then, of course, engage in a colloquy through the record where we will respond to what you're submitting. Withdraw any objections and just be delighted to.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
If I could just do one thing, one last question for Mr. Willard before yielding to the gentleman. So, Mr. Willard, I just want to be clear for the record. You stick by the statement you said just a few minutes ago that there was no political influence exercised in the decision by the Department of Energy to grant you $1.6 billion in a loan guarantee.
Yes, sir. To the best of my knowledge, this project was judged on its merits through its process.
Yield down to the gentleman from Ohio.
I don't often share the concerns and objections of my colleagues on these kind of matters. As a matter of fact, my opening statement made it very clear I have a different point of view. But I have to say, this issue of potential political influence on these loans ought to be looked at. That's why I'm going to submit to the record a letter to Secretary Chu from Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger that supports BrightSource Energy's project application.
If the gentleman would yield, I would join with you in encouraging that. As you know, my former governor was the author of those mandates that created the very opportunity for these businesses to have a 20-year guarantee with coerced forcing of public utilities, whether it penciled out or not, to have renewables.
Well, reclaiming my time, I just want to say that, let me ask the Chair.
Without objection.
Would the Chair then invite our friend Governor Schwarzenegger to this committee to explain why he supported the same BrightSource Energy project that the Obama administration supported? So we either have here a case of bipartisan influence or bipartisan agreement, and the result could be good. We may actually have here one of those extraordinary moments where we have leaders on both sides of the aisle that agree and support a project that should have been supported. So
if the gentleman would yield, I will personally call my dear friend, Governor Schwarzenegger, former governor, and invite him. I suspect that if he can get away from his busy schedule of new movies, that he will honor us with his presence, but I will personally call him.
That would be great. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, you've got the letter there. I'd like to now go to my questions, and I think that based on the clock, I probably have 5 minutes here. Okay.
I'd ask unanimous consent the clock be reset to at least 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. See how Democrats and Republicans get along, not only on this panel, but also with our energy policy. Now, the majority published a report in which they concluded, quote, the committee identified many cases where the DOE disregarded their own taxpayer protections, ignored lending standards and eligibility requirements, and, as a result, amassed an excessively risky loan portfolio. Bloomberg government came to a different conclusion. Bloomberg recently studied DOE's 1705 loan guarantee program. The title of that report is Beyond Solyndra, an analysis of DOE's loan guarantee program. I ask unanimous consent that it be placed in the record.
Without objection.
Bloomberg concluded that the 1705 DOE loan portfolio is, quote, composed of predominantly lower risk projects. Question to Mr. Katz. Is the majority's report correct, or is Bloomberg government? And did DOE amass an excessively risky portfolio, or is the portfolio composed of predominantly lower risk projects? I want to, by the way, I want to ask that the slide showing the distribution of projects within the entire portfolio, can we put it up on the monitors? And finally, Mr. Katz, I need brief answers. I've got a whole bunch of questions I have to go through in the next 5 minutes. So could you give me an answer?
I think Bloomberg is pretty clearly right. I mean, the default rate, by the time you assume all defaults come in, is 1/4 of what's budgeted. That's the bottom line.
Okay, the slide shows the vast majority of projects funded through 1705 were power generation projects. What is the difference between the risks associated with power generation projects as compared to manufacturing projects? Mr. Katz.
Power generation projects are typically based on long-term contracts with a utility or some other entity, whereas a manufacturer, it's higher risk because it goes into the company. In some cases, the companies have long-term contracts. Sometimes they don't. So again, the power generation contracts are very low risk because you've got long-term agreements to buy the power generated from the funded assets.
So as I understand it, one reason why the portfolio can be considered low risk is because most of the projects that receive 1705 loan guarantees are for power generation, and DOE required these companies to have long-term agreements in place with nearby utilities to purchase the power once built. This means the projects have a guaranteed income stream which greatly limits any risk of default. Is that true?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, Mr. Woolard, do you already have agreements in place to sell power to major utilities once the projects are completed? Brief answer.
Yes, sir. All power sold for 20 years.
And you did that because DOE required that you have those agreements before you received any federal loan guarantee. Is that correct?
I believe that the loan guarantee depended on those long-term power purchases.
Some may ask why the federal government should do anything that could cause loss of taxpayer dollars, as any loan guarantee program can. Now, Mr. Katz, why did Congress design the 1705 loan guarantee program to choose projects that have some degree of risk associated with them?
Because these are projects that are probably otherwise unable to get funding.
Would it have been possible for DOE to accomplish the goal of the law to spur technological advances to renewable energy technology without incurring any risk of losses?
No, because if it had gone for risk-free projects, those would have been projects that would have gotten private sector funding.
Okay, so you have Congress appropriating $2.47 billion as a kind of insurance fund to cover project losses. That's about 15% of the total amount of loan guarantees. Now, detractors of this program like to point to the bankruptcy of Solyndra to discredit the entire program, but the actual amount of losses is much lower. I'm going to ask staff to put up the slide showing projected losses compared to much smaller actual losses. Now, Mr. Katz, if Congress set aside money to cover project losses and then one or several companies ended up causing losses, would you say the entire program is a failure or that it's working as designed?
No, as a venture capitalist and as a PE investor, it's very clear that when you make a portfolio of investments, you hope that many will succeed, you expect a few to fail. What's impressive about this DOE loan program is how few have failed. The actual defaults are about 2%. That is, by the time you anticipate all of the defaults coming through, only 1/4 of the defaults that were budgeted and projected will occur. So by any reasonable measure, this has been a very successful program that should be extended and expanded.
So do you expect the default rate of the 1705 loan guarantee portfolio to exceed the 15% threshold that Congress itself anticipated?
No, it will be much less than that,
And
perhaps one quarter.
so you expect it to be about a quarter?
Correct.
Okay, and a quarter of?
A quarter of the 15%. In other words,
Okay, so the program's, you know, as I've said in my testimony, you said in yours, the program is performing better than expected in financial terms, but how's the program performing in terms of policy? Are the 1705 program financings spurring technological advances or not?
absolutely. These are breakthrough technologies, as we've heard from the CEOs here. For the U.S. military, this is one of their most important strategic objectives.
Mr. Ahern, what do you say?
The projects that we're building currently would not have been financed and would not be under construction if it were not for the loan guarantee program.
Is the program performing in terms of policy, yes or no?
As it relates to the types of projects that Mr. Woolard and I and Mr. Fairbanks are discussing, yes, it is performing.
Well, the whole point of this hearing, thank you, it seems to me, is that my colleagues, my friends on the other side of the aisle, seem to believe the federal government should not invest in green energy technologies. One expects my friends to be pro-business, but on this committee, we seem to have some confusion about that. Mr. Katz, Ahern, Willard, and the 1 second that remains, what's the risk of doing nothing? What would it mean for your industry and the economy in the long run if my colleagues got their wish and there was never a 1705 loan guarantee?
You make the Chinese very happy and the U.S. military very unhappy.
Mr. Ahern?
Well, maybe I differ slightly on some of these points.
I'm out of time.
The bridge has
Right,
allowed
yeah,
us
yeah.
to
He can
access
answer.
the private markets.
Mr. Woolard?
I believe that we would lose U.S. competitiveness worldwide because building things up in our backyard is important.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Appreciate it.
I think the gentleman, I'm confused again. Which is it? Is this loan guarantee program so great and these companies are so wonderful? This is apple pie, and yet Mr. Katz says they couldn't get funding in the private sector. So I mean, it can't be both. It can't be like, well, this is so wonderful, but we need the taxpayers.
Well, both things could be true,
we need political influence to make sure the taxpayer money gets put at risk. Or, I mean, Mr. Nelson didn't have any of that, and he was able. So again, I'm confused. It's so wonderful. Only two, and is the standard only a couple companies, only 2%, 4%, whatever the number is, are going to fail? Is that really the standard we want?
Would the gentleman yield?
Be happy to yield.
I think that you have a witness who has presented he didn't need help, and we have other witnesses who say that without this, we wouldn't be able to be competitive. So maybe both things are true.
Yield now to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the witnesses today. I think maybe only in Congress can we come out and testify that the results are better than we thought they would be, or in other words, we are not failing as bad as we expected. And you know, we look at this questioning today, and I look at it from the standpoint of a taxpayer, as we all should. And Mr. Ahern, when you started your testimony, it sounds like First Solar is a pretty good, solid company.
Yes, sir, it is.
It's doing well.
Yes.
Okay. And without the government help or the taxpayers' help, you don't think the company would be doing this well?
I think we would be doing very well without the help. We would not have been able to enter the U.S. utility market with these projects.
Okay. Now, you said that the company is traded on NASDAQ.
Yes.
How did it rank last year in terms of other companies on the S&P?
I'm not sure I understand what the ranking criteria would be, but if you're referring to the stock price declined last year in line with the industry.
Okay. In 2008, it traded at over 300 shares, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And currently trades about $17.
Yes.
If I told you it was the worst performing S&P stock in 2011, would that surprise you?
It would be out of line with the strong fundamentals of our company, but I don't know the statistics on the stock price.
Okay. You're chairman of the board and former CEO?
Yes.
Okay. Do the executives at First Solar have a lot of confidence in the company's performance?
Yes, they do. We all do. We feel like we've built a fundamentally extremely strong company that's got a great platform to expand our markets and our business.
Do you know in 2008, or starting in 2008, about how much money that First Solar executives pulled out of the company? In other words, selling their own stock?